On May 15th, 2026, at midnight, Drake did something no rapper in history had ever attempted at this scale. He didn't drop one album, he dropped 3. Iceman, Habibti, Maid of Honor, 43 new songs in a single night. Within 24 hours, Iceman became the most streamed album of 2026 in a single day on Spotify. Drake himself became the most streamed artist of 2026 in a single day. Apple Music registered an 1100% spike in simultaneous listeners across the platform. Iceman hit #1 on Apple Music's album charts in 79 countries, from the United States to mainland China, and industry trackers projected Iceman alone to move between 480,000 and 520,000 album equivalent units in its first week. That would make it his 15th #1 album on the Billboard 200, one more than Jay-Z, tied with Taylor Swift, behind only the Beatles. This is the comeback drop, his first solo project since the Kendrick Lamar War of 2024, his first real swing since the public said he'd lost, and he did it from the same city where he started, Toronto, not Los Angeles, not New York, not Miami. He still lives in the city he came from, he still rules it, and the place he rules it from is a 50,000 square foot residence in a Toronto neighborhood called the Bridle Path, where his property line backs onto streets so private that locals call the area Millionaire's Row. He calls the house the Embassy. Most people know the songs, most people know the hits, but very few people understand what this man has built on top of those songs in his own city. A $400 million net worth, a $100 million private residence, a $185 million private jet, a record label, a clothing line, a production company, a whiskey brand, a sneaker line with Nike, equity in esports, partnerships with the NBA, and an annual festival that turns one Canadian city into a global destination every October. But here is what I want to put on the table right now, before we go any further. Last month, a lot of you commented under my Kendrick video saying Drake is finished, that the beef ended him, that the streaming numbers are bought, the relevance is gone, and the next chapter is decline. I read all of it. I want to argue the opposite. I want to argue that the Iceman drop is not a comeback at all. I have been pulling property records, looking at the lawsuit filings against Universal Music Group, and tracing the timing of his asset moves. And what I am seeing does not look like a man trying to win back the culture. It looks like a man building a fortress. My thesis in one sentence: Drake's 50,000 square foot Toronto mansion is not a flex. It is a financial bunker, and it has been quietly engineered to survive the death of the streaming era, an era he himself believes is ending, which is exactly why he is suing the company that built his career. Let me show you how I got there. To understand the fortress, you have to understand the wound it was built to cover, and the wound goes back to a Toronto kid who spent his teenage years funding his own household. He was born Aubrey Drake Graham on October 24th, 1986. His parents divorced when he was 5. His father, a drummer from Memphis, moved back south. His mother, Sandra, a Jewish-Canadian teacher and florist, raised him alone in Toronto's Forest Hill neighborhood, upscale on the surface, struggling underneath. They were the renters in the wealthy zip code. I would skip the basic biography here, except for one detail that the chronological version of this story always buries. The detail is this: between 2001 and 2009, Drake was filming a Canadian teen drama called Degrassi. He played a high school basketball player who gets shot and ends up in a wheelchair. The role paid him roughly $40,000 to $50,000 per season, below what a Toronto teacher earned. During those years, his mother fell seriously ill. The medical bills mounted, and Drake has stated in multiple interviews that he was funding the household out of that sitcom paycheck, a teenager paying his mother's medical costs out of a teen drama salary. I want you to hold that detail, because every move he has made since 2010 makes more sense once you see what he was trained to do at 15 years old. He was trained to take any deal on the table, to never refuse money, to never bet on artistic patience when commercial money was being offered today. That training is what produces the Universal Music Group catalog deal of 2022. That training is what produces the $100 million Stake.com partnership, where Drake live streams himself betting Bitcoin on a crypto gambling platform, a deal that respectable artists at his level would not touch, but which Drake signed because that part of him is still the kid covering hospital invoices with TV checks. That training is what produces the 43-song triple album drop in a single night in 2026, because part of him does not believe the income will be there if he slows down. In 2006, age 19, still on Degrassi, he uploads a mixtape called Room for Improvement to the open internet. 2,000 copies sold off his own website. He follows it with Comeback Season in 2007, then So Far Gone in 2009. So Far Gone reaches Lil Wayne. Wayne flies him to Houston. Drake signs to Young Money Entertainment under Cash Money Records. That is the consensus version. Here is what the consensus version misses. The Young Money deal was a label deal, standard rapper contract. The label owns the masters, the artist takes the advance and prays for the back end. Drake watched, year after year, what that structure cost the artists ahead of him, and he started planning his exit before he had even finished his first album cycle. Thank Me Later debuts at #1 in 2010. Take Care wins the Grammy in 2011. Nothing Was the Same in 2013. If you're reading this, It's Too Late moves 535,000 units in its first week in 2015. Views in 2016. More Life in 2017. Scorpion in 2018. By April 2025, he is the first artist in history to surpass 500 million RIAA certified units. He crosses 130 billion total streams on Spotify. Those numbers are not the empire. Those numbers are the receipts. The empire is the deal he negotiated in 2022. On Universal Music Group's first quarter earnings call that year, the company confirmed it had re-signed Drake to what they called a long-term worldwide partnership. The deal covered everything: recorded music, publishing, film, television, brand rights. Industry estimates place the value at $400 million or more. Drake himself confirmed the upfront figure in a song lyric: $360 million cashed in advance. Now follow my logic here. This is the same Universal Music Group that Drake would sue less than 3 years later for defamation and streaming manipulation. The same company that pays him is the company he now alleges artificially inflated his rival's diss track. The lawsuit was filed in January 2025. A judge dismissed it. Drake is appealing. As of May 2026, it is still active. Why would a man who just collected a 9-figure check from a label turn around and sue that label? This is where most of the coverage stops asking questions. This is where I want to start asking them. Because the answer is not that Drake is irrational. The answer is that Drake stopped believing in the value of the asset he was paid for. When you accept $400 million for your catalog rights, you are essentially selling Universal a bet that streaming will keep paying out for the next 20 years. Drake took that money. And then, sometime between 2023 and the Kendrick beef of 2024, I believe he came to a conclusion that he has not said out loud, but that every move since has been screaming. The streaming era, as we know it, is dying. Look at the timing. The It's All a Blur tour grosses $320 million across 2023 and 2024, the highest grossing hip-hop tour in history. He moves more aggressively into Stake.com gambling revenue. He buys the $75 million Beverly Hills compound in 2022. He acquires the 313-acre Texas ranch in Hempstead, and he finishes construction on the embassy in Toronto. These are not the moves of a man planning to keep collecting Spotify royalties forever. These are the moves of a man converting paper streaming wealth into hard, illiquid, defensible assets before the bottom falls out. Which brings me to the property records. I want you to look at this with me. Drake purchased the 2-acre plot at 21 Park Lane Circle in Toronto's Bridle Path in 2015 for $6.7 million. He then spent years building. The finished residence runs 50,000 square feet across the property. The total construction cost has been estimated at $100 million. Most coverage treats this house as a flex. Architectural Digest treated it as a flex. I think they all read it wrong. Look at the components. The exterior is clad in 19th century Indiana limestone, the same material used on courthouses and parliament buildings. The perimeter fence is 14.5 feet high with 24-hour security. The bathtub in the master suite weighs 4,000 pounds because it is carved from a single block of black marble. You do not buy a 4,000-pound bathtub for comfort. You buy it because 4,000 pounds of stone does not depreciate, cannot be repossessed, cannot be liquidated by a lawsuit, and cannot be devalued by a streaming royalty rate cut. The chandelier in the foyer contains over 20,000 hand-cut Swarovski crystals, the second largest of its kind on Earth. The piano in one of the rooms is a custom Bosendorfer concert grand, designed in collaboration with the Japanese contemporary artist Takashi Murakami. Not inspired by Murakami, designed by him. The basketball court is full NBA regulation with a 21-foot pyramidal skylight called the OVO Center. Every single object in that house is a vehicle for converting cash into something a court order cannot touch. This is the the same logic behind the Beverly Hills compound, which he listed for $88 million and then chose to rent out for $250,000 a month instead of taking a loss. Same logic behind the 313-acre Texas property at the former inn at Dos Brisas. Stables, villas, farmland. Same logic behind Air Drake, the $185 million Boeing 767 that Cargojet gave him as a gift in 2019 in exchange for branding. He did not even pay cash for the plane, he paid in association. I am telling you, the man is not flexing, he is fortifying. And this is where the Iceman trilogy comes in. The official narrative is that the May 15th, 2026 drop is Drake's comeback record, his response to Kendrick, his swing at a 15th Billboard 200 #1, which would pass Jay-Z for the most rap #1s ever and tie Taylor Swift for the most among solo artists. I think the narrative is missing the point. 43 songs in one night is not a comeback. 43 songs in one night is contractual delivery. Industry analysts at Music Ally raised the question openly. They speculated that the triple album drop may be Drake satisfying outstanding obligations to Universal Music Group ahead of a potential parting of the ways. Whether he is contractually trapped or strategically exiting, the volume tells you the same thing. He is running out the clock on the deal he signed in 2022, even as he sues the same company in court. The album cover is the second tell. The hand on the Iceman cover is wearing a crystal-studded glove once owned by Michael Jackson. Drake reportedly paid $120,000 for that single glove. The hand sign in the photograph is the Toronto 6IX. The mainstream read on that image is tribute. Drake tying himself to Jackson's record of 13 Hot 100 #1s. Drake honoring the king of pop. In my opinion, the glove is not a tribute. The glove is a warning. Michael Jackson, at the peak of his commercial dominance, controlled his masters, controlled the Beatles' publishing catalog, and converted his cash into Neverland, a fortress estate that survived him. Drake is putting on Jackson's literal glove on the cover of the album he is delivering to the label he is suing. The visual signal is not, I am the next Jackson. The visual signal is, I am exiting the same way Jackson exited, through asset accumulation, through catalog leverage, through physical real estate that cannot be undone by a corporation. And he is doing it in his own city, on purpose. Toronto is the recursive anchor of this entire story. He grew up there in Forest Hill while his mother fell ill. He launched the Mixtape there in 2006. He kept the label, OVO Sound, headquartered there. He kept OVO Fest there every October. He has been the global ambassador of the Toronto Raptors since 2013. He installed a giant block of ice in downtown Toronto in 2026 to tease the Iceman release date, until the Toronto Fire Department melted it down over safety concerns. And the embassy, the fortress itself, sits inside Toronto city limits. Drake did not stay in Toronto for sentimental reasons. He stayed because Canadian property law, Canadian tax treatment of artist income, and the geographic distance from Universal Music Group's American legal jurisdiction all favor an artist who is planning a long contractual war with a US-based label. Read the moves together. A $100 million mansion in a jurisdiction friendly to him. A $185 million jet held under a Canadian sponsorship structure. A $400 million Universal deal he has already partially collected on. A defamation lawsuit against that same Universal entity. A $100 million per year gambling endorsement that is reportedly in dispute as of late 2025. A diamond glove on his album cover. A triple album drop that smells like contract fulfillment. This is a man preparing to walk away from the recorded music industry with most of its money already in his wall. Now, I want to be fair to the other side of this. His defenders will say that the numbers do not lie. Iceman set a 2026 Spotify record within 48 hours. The streaming engine is still working. The It's All a Blur tour grossed $320 million in the worst publicity cycle of his career. The OVO brand, the Nike NOCTA line, the Dream Crew production company that helped revive Top Boy on Netflix and put fingerprints on Euphoria on HBO, all of it is still printing money. The man is still in his 30s. The catalog still compounds. And they will say that the lawsuit against Universal is not a sign of fear. It is a sign of an artist with enough leverage to sue his own label and survive the headline. Both sides are looking at the same evidence, and both sides have a real argument, but my read is the one I have spent this whole video laying out, and I want to state it one more time before I let you weigh in. I do not think Drake is finished. I think Drake is doing something more interesting than that. I think he is the first major streaming era artist to look at the model that made him and conclude, quietly, that the model is finite. The royalty rates are compressing, the labels are consolidating, the AI music generation tools are about about to flood the supply side. The Kendrick beef of 2024 showed him, in public, that even 130 billion Spotify streams will not save you when the algorithm and the public mood turn against you in the same week. So he is doing what Michael Jackson did, what Jay-Z did, what every artist who survives the death of their own era eventually does. He is converting fame into property, property into a fortress, the fortress into a defense against the lawsuit, the next beef, and the next industry contraction. In my opinion, the question is not whether Drake wins the Universal Music Group appeal. The question is whether 12 months from now, Drake is still on Universal at all, or whether the Iceman trilogy was the last piece of inventory he owed them before walking out the door with the $400 million already wired, the masters argued over in court, and the embassy paid off in Toronto. Here's what I think happens next. I think the UMG appeal continues to grind through 2026. I think Drake quietly accelerates his physical asset acquisitions in Canada and Texas. I think the Stake.com partnership is renegotiated or terminated in the next 6 months. I think we get a fourth and possibly a fifth surprise project before the year is out. Not because Drake has artistic urgency, but because contract fulfillment is now the cleanest way out. And I think the next major Drake headline is not a new album. It is a corporate filing. He is the man who turned the city that raised him into the city that owes him. And from inside that city, he is preparing to walk away from the entire industry that paid him, with the industry's own money in his walls. Tell me in the comments whether you read the Iceman cover as tribute or as warning. I read it as warning, but I want to know what you see.